This is the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast with your host, Greg Jameson. Influencer marketing is the process of identifying, researching, engaging, and supporting the people who create high-impact conversations with your customers. On each episode, I talk with industry leaders, business rock stars, and internet celebrities who contribute their knowledge about influencing others and growing your influence. Welcome to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. I'm your host, Greg Jameson. And today I am super excited. I've got a guest with me, Eli Delaney. And Eli and I have known each other for years. We met at, like a number of people that have been on this podcast, actually, we met at Ken MacArthur's event, which... Yep. At the time was called, what was it called?
The Impact events.
Oh, the Impact event, but before that it was called JV something or, but whatever the case is, I'm really glad that Eli's with us today here. Eli, like myself, is a marketer, and one of the things that he really specializes in is getting people to work on their follow-up with people. You can have lots and lots of leads, but if you aren't following up with them and building that relationship, all those leads aren't really going to help you. So at any rate, welcome, Eli. I'm really happy that you're here. Go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Greg. It's my pleasure to be here. Good to hang out with you. It's been way too long since we've actually talked.
It has been.
And yes, it was Ken MacArthur's Impact event in Denver is when you and I actually met. I think it was 4 years ago, something like that. As of this recording, somewhere right around there. Just that's kind of one of my special gifts, is the fact that I remember when I met people and how that happened, because the relationships are the important thing for me more than anything else. As far as my background goes, I've been in business for over 25 years. My first business was a web and graphic design agency. Had a blast getting that started. I really had no clue what I was doing other than I could write HTML code and I could do pretty pictures in Photoshop. And that took me to the point of growing that company from just myself working out of my dining room to opening up an agency. I had an office, I had 5 employees, and we're closing 3 to 5 contracts a week, all within our local market. We weren't doing anything outside of a 20-mile radius. And then I realized I didn't like having an office and I didn't like having employees. So ended up kind of migrating to the next phase. Long story short, I ended up moving to what I do now, which is really why I had the success back then, which is the follow-up systems. It's how do you put a process in place so, as a human being, as human beings, we drop the ball on things. We get busy, we get sidetracked, we forget, things happen. But by putting systems in place to follow up long-term, we end up taking those casual connections, people we might meet at an event like the Impact event or things like that, and stay in touch, build those relationships to convert those connections into actual clients, raving fans, and even friendships for life. So that's kind of the 1-minute version of what I do.
And it's, as you're talking there, I just realized how really important that is. And I'll share with you a story that about myself and my email list, and I'm sure that it's true with so many other people, is I have got a ton of people on my email list of people that have opted in for whatever reason over time, but they haven't ever really connected with me. Maybe 1/10 of them have. And so I've got this big email list, and whenever I try to email to the full list, my email stats come back telling me how bad I did because people aren't opening these emails and so forth. Yeah. If I take that 10% and email just to them, my email open rates go through the roof. The industry average is like somewhere between 20 and 24%. I'll get 70% open rates when I email just to the people that are actually really interested, because of what you said. I built a relationship with them, and that other 90%, for whatever reason, I haven't been able to build that relationship with them, and so they ignore my emails.
Yeah. Well, and there's some things that you could do that that make that stand out more to get those numbers to go up. Like the very first thing is make sure that it says it's from Greg Jameson. You know, that's one of the things I see a lot of times. I'll see people put their company name in the from field, and I don't know a company name, but I know a person. We've got to remember that relationships and businesses based by people buy from people. They don't buy from companies. And so by changing that shift to it coming from a person, now you're working on a relationship, and people pay attention to that. You know, things like that, little details, you know, there's that phrase that's been around forever, the devil's in the details. Things like that will instantly make a bump up. I actually have a guy right now who's actually doing just the opposite, because I happen to be on his list, because I sign up for everybody's list. I want to see what kind of stuff they're doing.
I do
and
too.
and it's just so funny because this guy, I bought this book online. It was a free plus shipping book. And I get like 1 or maybe 2 emails from the actual author. And now I get all these other emails, but they keep changing the subject or the from name to different names. And some of them are, you know, your so-and-so concierge, or the person's name, or the guy who forgets a lot, and all these different things. And I'm like, there's no relationship. There's no consistency there for me to feel like I can trust them. And the first thing I see them, I have to actually stop and pay attention to see, is this spam? And a lot of times I delete it. I just hit it as a spam button because I'm like, I don't know what this is. And so those kind of details will make a difference. The other thing is having a conversation. That's one of the biggest things that I see, is that people try to put an article into their emails, into their communications. And quite honestly, a lot of times people just don't, they don't have time to mess with it. They don't have time to read it, or they're not necessarily looking for an article, but you could write a message from a storytelling standpoint, but it's you talking to me instead of an article. And now all of a sudden I'm going to pay more attention to it. Does you see where I'm kind of going with this? It's about making it a dialogue instead of a monologue. And that I have seen, I had one client that we worked with that literally, she's like, I don't know, my list is pretty much burnt. I don't know if this is even going to be worth it for us to try to save these people. And this is right at the beginning of our relationship. I'm like, well, let's try it. You know, worst case scenario, we send 2 or 3 emails. It doesn't work. We burn the list and move on, but let's try it. Her average had been less than a 7% open rate. By rewriting the way those emails came out, the first one that was written by us came out at a 9%, the second one at a 12%, the third one at a 15%, the next one at a 19%. All from just changing the tone from a quote unquote newsletter to, you know, hey, Greg, I just wanted to check in with you today. How's it going? We're having a conversation.
Yeah. And you saying that right there, I think, is one of the other things that you can do besides having it come from your name, having it go to a name.
Yes.
So you actually personalize the email, and you do, you know, maybe right in the subject line, you say, Eli, check this out.
Yeah.
And then start the message. Hey, Eli.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. You gotta be careful though. One of the things, I don't personalize mine with their name. And the very simple reason is because I don't know if you've ever seen, you know, you send out an email and you realize that it went out to Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, and, you know, Donald Trump. You know, we have those kind of situations where people will put in fake names to begin with. So I do try to be careful about that. But what you can do is, and this is just be careful about where you use it. Don't use it too much. Don't stuff somebody's name in there too many times, because that's yes, the psychological factors. We love hearing our own names. But then if I were to talk to you and I said, hey, Greg, how's it going? You know, Greg, that I had this guy that I met today, and this is what we talked about. And have you ever been in that situation, Greg, and you just keep saying it too many times? Now it's just like, okay, now you're just being creepy. Your emails are going to read the same way. So be careful about doing too much of that. But what you can do is make sure you use your language the way you talk in there. So as a great example, for me, when I started, I don't write somebody's name in an email. What I do is I actually started out with, hey there. Because if anybody knows me, that's actually how I start a conversation with most people. If I see you in a room, I'm going to walk up to you and go, hey there, how's it going? And so because that's part of my personality, that's how I write in my emails as well.
Yeah. And I think that authenticity factor is huge. The fact is that most of us, certainly me, probably not you, but I have a hard time remembering people's names in person. So if I try hard, when I meet somebody, I look at them and I'm like, oh, they've got odd-shaped ears, or they've got a big nose or whatever, and I try to relate that to something so that I remember their name.
Right.
But all those tricks of trying to remember people, I'm still not very good at it. So the reality is I probably would walk up and say, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
I remember meeting you from before, but I don't remember where.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that is we are like that. When you go back to real face-to-face networking, which sadly we don't get to do much of right now, when you're doing real networking, that is an actual factor. And I can be that way too. Sometimes I'll forget people's names. And the funny thing is I will forget their name, but I remember where I met them, what we talked about. If I met them multiple times, I actually had a gentleman, and I have a course on networking that I taught for this specific reason, because so many people have that exact situation. And I had a guy who I met years and years and years ago, and we hit it off. We had an amazing conversation. The next time I saw him at another event, I go to walk up to him, I'm like, oh, man, I can't think of his name. And so I just faked it. Yeah, and that's where that, hey there, how's it going, man? We have the conversation, and we continue the conversation just like we had never even stopped. Great conversation. Everything was awesome. Another time comes by, and we're talking like months in between, and we keep having this, and I'm freaking out because I feel so bad that I have such an amazing relationship with this person, but I can't remember their name, but I'm too embarrassed to ask. And the funny thing about it is that one event, I think it was almost 3 years later, we were at an event, and it happened to be an event that everybody had their name badges, and he had a name badge on. His name is John Michael. As soon as I saw it, I never forgot. So one of the things I always teach people in a face-to-face situation is don't let other people be in that situation. Wear a name badge, make it easier for them. And so we have that. And that is a fact. It just happens. Some people are great with names. Some people aren't. Do what you can to remember, but in the meantime, do what you can to help other people so they don't have to worry about it.
I agree. I was actually at a training one time where one of the speakers had this amazing gift of being able to remember everybody's name. Mm-hmm. And there was about 170 of us in the room.
That's crazy.
And basically what he did is he had everybody one by one stand up, tell them what their name was. And then like 3-4 hours later, we came back into the room for a different session, and everybody was told to take a different seat than what they had before. So everybody was randomly dispersed in the room. And this guy went around the room and he named every single person in that room without missing a beat.
That's impressive. I definitely can't do that.
No, me either. And most people can't. So your advice there, I agree, is, if you don't have a name tag or whatever, you come up and you say, hey, whatever you do, but you say, Greg Jameson, glad to see you again.
Yeah.
And then the other person is like, oh yeah, that's Greg.
Yeah. Well, and when we talk about face-to-face stuff, that's one of the reasons why I'm actually still an advocate for business cards too. A lot of people don't like business cards. They don't carry them anymore. I actually still carry them, and I actually prefer people do for that same reason, because psychologically, when we hear something, we may or may not remember it, but if we see it, it's more likely to get locked into our heads. And so if I can see you and I can see your business card, I am more likely to actually remember your name down the road, even if I never do anything with that business card again. If I could look at the business card and give it back to you, I'm easily 10 times more likely going to remember your name than I would have if you had just told it to me. And so that's another little trick that I've used over the years. And I tell people again, I know that they seem like they're outdated and a lot of people don't want to have them anymore, but carry your business cards with you anyway, because that is one of the things when people can see your name that will help them remember you better.
And actually what I like, and I don't do this myself, but I like it when people do it for me, so I should probably change, is I like business cards with people's pictures on them for that very reason. So the next time you see them, it's like, oh yeah, that's Eli. Yeah. And I do that with my email signature blocks. I put my picture on my email signature block, which I actually recommend that people would do that.
Right. Yeah. The biggest thing, if you're going to do that, is always be consistent with it. So if it's like that in your newsletter system, make sure it's also like that set up in your Gmail account or whatever email system you're using for one-off emails, because the consistency is something that does stand out. I'm a big fan of keep it simple. We don't do a lot of graphics. We don't do headers. I don't use a picture or anything in a signature block. My emails are, hey there, this is what we want to talk about. Eli, I have real basic, very straightforward stuff, because it is designed to be, if I'm going to send you an email, Greg, I want it to be like a conversation between you and I. And so we just want to be consistent with that. And the same thing in the long term is stay consistent in just checking in. When you're sending emails out to people, you're building that relationship. Keep in mind, it is about the relationship. So it's not always about the pitch. Sometimes just sending an email that says, hey there, I just want to check in and see how you're doing. What's up? And that's it. Nothing else.
With that, let's talk more about that on the other side of the break that we need to take right now.
Sounds good.
All right. Hi, I'm Greg Jameson, the host of the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. Every week, I not only have the opportunity, but the real privilege of interviewing experts in their field, true thought leaders, and I get to share this information with you. The purpose of this is really to help you sell more of your products and services online, which is the core premise of my primary business, Web Stores Limited. At Web Stores, we go out and we create e-commerce websites for small businesses. Plus, we do internet marketing and digital advertising for those businesses to really help them sell more online. We have a whole number of resources and tools designed to help make this process easier for businesses, probably much like yours. I've been the author of several #1 best-selling books, including Amazon's Dirty Little Secrets and The Influencer Effect, plus a whole series of online courses if you want to learn how to do this stuff yourself. The best way to remain in contact with me, besides subscribing to this podcast, of course, is to simply go to gregjameson.com/free gift, where I have a special offer for you simply because you are a valued listener to this podcast. Thanks again, and now let's get back to today's episode. Welcome back to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. My guest today is Eli Delaney, and right before the break, we were talking about the need to be consistent with your emails. The fact is that if you have an email list and people only ever hear from you once a month, that's not much of a relationship. They need to hear from you consistently. If you only hear from your friends once a month, once every 6 months, you probably don't have as strong of a relationship as somebody that you call up on a weekly basis. So I'm going to let Eli expand on that a little bit here.
Well, and it's about consistency as a whole. And it's not just consistency as you need to stay in touch with your list. It's not about email once a week instead of once a month, but it's about building the relationship. And that really is the key to all of it. As a great example with this, when we talked to, like I talked about it just before the break, was don't just email when you've got something for sale, email just to check in. How's it going? Or now you can send out other stuff, as in, you know, if you've ever seen a good movie or you read a great book, you're going to share it with your friends, right? So let's do that. You know, send it, you got a great book, you know, share it out with people and say, hey, by the way, I read this. I thought you might find it powerful. This is why I liked it so much. Here's a link to it on Amazon. Now that's your literally your entire script, by the way. You know, don't make it more complicated than that. But by doing that, people now remember who you are. Chances are they probably already know what you do and how you could help them. Because if you've built a relationship in any long-term factor, they know what you do. You don't need to say, and by the way, I could, if you're really interested in this, you could buy this on my website here. Because, you know, that's takes it from relationship and adding value to he's pitching me again. And we've all had that. We've had those people that the only time we ever hear from them is when they have something for sale. I'm sure we've all been there, right?
Yep.
That's where we got to get away from that, because I have people that I follow, people that I know, and I like them. Some people I even consider friends, but literally the only time I ever hear from them is when they've got something for sale. I'm like, I can have a great conversation with you one-on-one, but if I don't hear from you anytime in between, except for when you got something for sale or you need something from me, that's not a very good friendship. You know, and our relationships with our prospects, our clients, our referral partners are no different. People want to know that you care about them and you want to add value to them. And yes, you have stuff for sale. We're not hiding that in any way, shape, or form. We just don't have to shove it down people's throats.
No, but I can see, you know, especially people that have online stores, it seems like they do exactly what you say. They are out there, every single email is like, here's my latest stuff that's on sale or whatever, as opposed to saying something like, I don't know, let's say that you are selling some kind of spices online. You could just simply say, hey, I came across this great recipe that happens to use this spice, thought you might enjoy it, period.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cool thing about it is if you do it right, if they don't have the spice, they're going to order it from you. I mean, it's really that simple, you know? Like I'll talk to people all the time about little tips, tricks, and resources, things that they can do that are going to help them with their productivity or with their, you know, automation of what they do. So like, as a great example, I'll talk to somebody about doing exactly what we're talking about right here. As a matter of fact, I had this person who later became a client, but when I first talked to her, I told her, I was like, send a message out to your entire list and just say, hey, you know, we talk about all these different things that we're doing, but I really haven't stopped and just asked you, what are you working on? And I wanted to ask you that and see what's going on. And is there anything I can do to help you out? And the funny thing was that I happened to be on her list as well. And I got that email and I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was talking about. And her response was, oh my gosh, Eli, I cannot believe the responses that I've got from this. This one email has gotten me more response than anything I've ever done before.
Asking questions is huge. And I think that that's something that so few people do in emails. They preach rather than asking questions. And asking questions can be a miracle for your list.
Yeah. Well, and the key is, and I said this earlier, it's about creating a dialogue. It's not a monologue. It's not a soapbox. It's a dialogue. It's asking questions, building the relationship, and adding value. And when you do that, it totally changes the entire relationship and the entire feeling of how you deal with things and how people deal with you, because then they see you as a trusted resource as opposed to another marketer trying to sell them stuff.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is interesting, and it's hard to do with automation, but as we build relationships with people, we start to know certain things about them. For example, one of the other people that we both know that we met at Ken's event is Brian G. Johnson. We know that he has poodles.
Yep. He's a
most of
dog
the
guy.
most of the people there know that I'm an avid skier. I know that you're an avid archer. And I appreciate the fact that you use a recurve bow instead of a compound bow.
Actually, I don't even use a recurve. I use a longbow.
Oh, good
I'm
for
like,
you.
I'm old
That's even
school.
better. That means you got to do it all by sight.
It is all by sight. It is, yeah, it's a whole different creature. It's a lot of fun.
But when we know these facts about people,
Hmm.
uh, it's tough to put that into an automated email, I
Right.
think. But maybe you have some ideas on that, or have some ideas on automation in general that you can share with people.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is keep it evergreen and keep it simple. So your automation is designed to be the tools, the things that happen when you can't or don't do the follow-up. So as an example, we all have those great intentions of staying in touch with people on a regular basis. And most of the time we don't do a very good job of it because life happens, it gets busy. So let's put the automation in place to where we can share tips, tricks, resources, things like that. And those can be generic. They don't have to be very specialized. You can go down that route. So as an example, let's say we'll use dogs as a great example since you brought up Brian, because he's a dog guy. I'm a dog guy as well. So I could actually segment down if I know somebody's in a dog, they're a dog person. I can actually segment them down into a specific list and maybe have it so if the email comes in, these people are dog people, these people are cat people, and you have a very similar email that goes out to each of those two groups. You could do that. And it's not really that complicated with the right tools. But you don't have to necessarily do it that way. You can keep it more generic and across the board. So that, again, tips, tricks, resources, things that are going to help them out in their lives, whether it be your business. Like for me, it's business to business, so it's pretty easy. If I recommend, it's a great example. So let me pull, because I keep it right here, because I talk about this so much, The Go-Giver. Okay, so Go-Giver is a great book. If you haven't read it, you should read it. Bob Burg is an amazing dude. It's an easy read. So I will talk about this. I'll say, hey, The Go-Giver is a great book. If you haven't read it, this is why I like it so much. Here's a link. Very straightforward, clean, right? I can talk also about the fact that I had him as a guest on my podcast. And so I'll share that story. Now that's going to happen if somebody's in business, doesn't matter what kind of business they have, it's relevant. If you got this email today, it's relevant. If you get it 3 years from now, it's still relevant. And so think that way from the automation standpoint. But then when you personally reach out to people, which you should do from time to time, I do it a lot of times. I'll actually do that on Facebook, where I'll see something that somebody posts and it'll grab my attention. So I'll shoot that person a message. And I can bring up those personalized things there. So all this other stuff is already happening. And these things are sprinkles that happen as they happen. If they don't happen, this is still happening. This is still working over here. The automation is still working if I get busy, if I don't have time, or I forget to do the other stuff. That way you got the mix of it, but don't overthink it. Don't make it so complicated that you have to personalize every little thing, because then you'll never actually launch it. You'll never put it in place. So go with the basic. Just keep in mind, what are the things that my people will see value in that will make their day better if they read this? And it's not necessarily about you. It's not your article. It's not necessarily your podcast. It's not necessarily a video you did on YouTube. You can mix those in. But when you add other things like other people's books, other people's shows, other people's videos, things like that as part of the mix, then what that does is that actually adds more credibility, because I don't care how awesome my book is. When I say you should buy my book and this is why it's so awesome, it's still self-serving. Does that make sense?
Okay, great advice there. As we wrap up, is there any kind of final thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with?
The biggest thing is make it about adding value. That's what we need more than anything else. And it is in bite-sized chunks. You don't have to write a novel. You don't have to do anything complicated. Just like, you know what? Hey, I saw this article that was on success.com. I thought was pretty cool. I thought I'd share it with you. It'll take you 10 minutes to write it once, and you can put it in the system and make it evergreen forever. My system has been running for about 6 years now. I'm actually reworking it right now, but I have an automated system that I put together 6 years ago, and it runs in a 3-year loop. My running joke is the fact I could go outside and get hit by a bus today, and 3 years from now, I'm still going to sell you stuff. That's where you think automation can really come in play, because I know that if something happens, I want to take a vacation, I get sick, I got family stuff going on, it doesn't matter. I know something is going out to help the people I know. That's all I'm looking for, because when they are ready to buy from me, they will come back.
Great information. Really appreciate it. Can you let our listeners know how they can stay in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. So go to connectwitheli.com, and it's Connect with Eli, E-L-Y. That's how I spell my name. Connectwitheli.com, and you go there. It's got a link to all my social medias. It's got a webinar that I do, all kinds of different stuff. You can find anything you need there. And definitely connect with me on Facebook. And if you heard me on this show, connect with me and send me a message. That'll make you stand out. Say, hey, I heard you on Greg's show and it was really awesome. I'd love to talk to you more. I'm totally an open book. I love chatting with people all the time. So, my big thing is meet cool people. I love to meet cool people. So if you want to book a call with me, I'm happy to chat with you, but you got to let me know how you found me.
Sounds great. I'll make sure that's in the show notes too. And I encourage anybody listening, take Eli up on that. Go to his website there and take him up on that offer here to have a chat with him too. Appreciate you being here, my friend.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. It was a pleasure. I have a lot of fun talking about this stuff.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of 20 Minutes of Influence. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you are interested in booking myself as a speaker at one of your events, or are interested in any of my coaching programs, please visit gregjameson.com.